Hello everyone, and welcome today to our session. This is our monthly live webinar. This is October 2021, and we're just going to do just a walkthrough of Quirkos today, some of the different things you can do, some of the basic operations, and we'll be live and available in the chat if you want to ask any questions with anything in particular that you'd like us to demonstrate today. And always a good first stop is our website, www.quirkos.com. Here you can download Quirkos and try it for free. There's two different versions of Quirkos. You'll see when you click on the Get Quirkos here, so there's a client you need to install on your computer, and it's identical across Windows, Mac and Linux, so you can install for whichever operating system you like. You'll also see that there's two ways to work with Quirkos. There's the Quirkos Cloud, and this is a subscription-based service. The software is the same, but it means you've got unlimited storage on our cloud server, and that's best for collaborations, working on different computers, going on from your laptop to your desktop and having all the data synchronized for you. But there's also the offline version here, and the offline version again has the same features except the live collaboration, because the projects are just stored on your own computer, saved on your hard drive, your computer. So that's sometimes more convenient if you're working with very confidential data, but there's also a difference in the licensing structure. So whereas the cloud subscription you can pay quarterly or annually, the offline license is a one-off fee. So that helps a lot of people just kind of it's a lot cheaper if you've got a kind of long-term project to work on. So both of those options are there, they're compatible, so you can move data across them. If you've got people working on the different options, then that's not a problem at all. When you download and install Quirkos, you'll have a 14-day trial of the cloud version and a 21-day trial of the offline version. You can use both to see which works out best for you. What we're going to do today is look at some of the example data sets. In fact, there's quite a new one up there. So if you go to quirkos.com/workshops, you'll see quite a few different data sets that we use in our training workshops. But there's a new one which has got up there quite recently, which is Qual. And this is a new project which we'll be talking about a lot more in the future, where we've done a real research project and talked to people about qualitative researchers about their own kind of qualitative journey. And we've transcribed these and got permission to anonymize them and share them so that we could use these for training resources. And it's just something that's quite easy to kind of engage with and play with. I've not looked at the data very much myself, so it's going to be quite fun today looking at some of these and working on them myself. So once you've downloaded the data, or you may already have your own data to work with, you install Quirkos on your computer, and when you start it up, it will look a little bit something like this. So we've got here the ability to sign in. So this is used for the cloud account, and you've also got the offline version here. And then this is used for the local storage option, just working on your own computer. I'm just going to work offline today, so I'm just going to click continue with local storage. If you're working on the trial, you get a dialog here, which allows you just to click continue with trial and tells you how many days you've got left remaining on your trial subscription. And then you have a list here of the projects that you've recently worked on, and you can remove any ones that you don't want. And if you've got other ones you've brought in from another computer or from someone else, you can click on the open other and bring them in here. You do need to create a project first before you can start bringing in your data, because the project kind of collates and keeps everything in one place. So that's the first thing that we're going to do today. So we're just going to click on the new project button here. There's space here for the author, so if you've got different people working on the project, you can see who's done what particular piece of work. You've got the options here to password protect the project if you need to have an extra level of encryption for it that does securely encrypt the project so that nobody else can read it without the password to unencrypt it. There's also an option here for structured questions. Now this is mostly used for people who are doing surveys, basically types of data that are very formally structured, so you ask the same question to each participant. We can leave that off for now because we're working with semi-structured interviews, and we'll click on the new project button here to create our project. Now it asks us where we want to save it, so I'm just going to keep this in the documents project, and I'm going to put in the name here, Qual Interview Project. And then just click on the Save button. So now this has created a new project that I can start working with. And it's empty at the moment, there's nothing in there. So probably the first thing we'll do is bring in some sources of data into the project, although you don't have to. So we've recently put a blog post up about a priori coding and framework analysis. So sometimes you might want to start creating the codes and themes that you use to analyze your qualitative data first. But in this case, we're going to bring in the data first. So I'm just going to click on the button on the top right here. You'll see it's highlighted, click to add source. And I've got a series of options here. So I can put in a blank source, and I can keep my own notes in here, or I can copy and paste from somewhere else. I can select files which are on my computer. That's what I'm going to do just now. I can also copy and paste from the clipboard. So if I've copied something from a website, I can bring in CSV files. So I've got something from Excel. I can bring in a spreadsheet of data. I can also bring in an entire folder at once. But I'm just going to choose select files, and then I'm going to go to, was it downloads? Yes, downloads, and then Qual Interviews. And in this folder, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 interviews at the moment. So I can click to select all of these or some of these. I'll take all of them in just in one and click on the open button. And then it should pop up and say, after it's brought these in, how many sources came in. 7 sources have been imported. Great. Click on OK. And I can drag and drop this slider here to change the width of the text column. So I'm going to make this a bit bigger so I can see the text. And then also for purposes of the streaming, I'm going to change the text size, and that's done in Settings, General Project Preferences, and then make the text size a bit bigger. Great, so hopefully you can see what's going on. Right, so you now see that across the top of the screen here we've got these tabs, and the tabs allow us to go through the 3 most recently used sources that we've been working on. And there's also a button here which has got the list of all the sources in the project. And so I can click here, and Matilda, for example, is not there, but I can just open that up in a tab there as well. And so this way we can move between all the different sources in the project. We can do a quick search in here. So if we want to look for we'll see there's Danny and David, and Matilda, of course, as well. Okay, so it's still popping up. It shows who brought them into the project and when. And this number here shows us what percentage of that has been coded. So for this source, how much has been assigned to a particular code, or any code actually. There's also an X button here which you can remove the sources from the project. So I'm going to start with, which one do we have here? Matilda Education. And I'm going to start right ahead and try and do some coding, I think. So I'm basically going to do a kind of grounded theory approach. I'm not going to start with a coding framework. I'm just going to look straight at it and see what kind of things I can see of interest into the data. So here's the interviewer, int, and then res for respondent in this particular file. And I've got some timestamps here as well. So I don't really know anything about your background, Matilda, and your career. How come you came to be where you are now? Can you fill me in? I have a very messy work history, as you should try to explain it. My PhD was originally in English literature, and I did that a very long time ago. I think I finished about 96, and I worked for 10 years as casual lecturing, teaching studies and university courses, and literary studies and cultural studies, film studies, gender studies, a whole range of things, a bit like university relief teacher, I think now. I tell myself that was at the forefront of the academic preseriat and gig economy, which is not a good thing. Okay, so that's a very long sentence, but let's see what can we put in here. So my PhD was originally in English literature. I did that a very long time ago. So okay, we can put this. I'm interested in these people's kind of career history. It's one of the things that I want to explore in this data, how people are talking about their career progression. And so people talking about their PhD, because these are all academics, is very important to me. So I'm going to create a new code by clicking on this button here, and we'll call this one PhD. Oops. The space in here to put a longer description. So doctoral studies. I can click here to change the color that I want to represent this code with. So I'll choose a kind of green. Click save, and now you see I've got a little button here. I can click and drag and move this around. and that bubble represents the PhD theme. So I'll click and drag some text onto that, and that's added that section of text to be the PhD. And he talks about this person, Matilda, she talks about the PhD somewhere else as well. My first job when I finished my PhD was actually an academic journal as a sub-editor there. Okay. And then you see the size grows as we add more and more to them. So I did freelance editing. Also I saw a job to work with the international PhD students at Australia University on their course for only the first semester to help PhD students settle in and provide more structured background. So that's PhD as well. But now this is getting interesting because actually this person is not talking about their own PhD anymore. They're talking about someone else's. So we've got this simple category for PhD, but it's now not clear whether it's someone else's PhD or the respondent's own PhD. So maybe we need to have a new theme. So we'll create a new theme which we call PhD support. And I'm going to add that code text PhD support bubble. And you see, this is pretty stupid because this is the similar color. So we're just going to change this to something that looks a bit different. Change that to purple. Okay. And now I'm going to remove this from the PhD theme, right-clicking on that code there, choosing remove highlight. Okay, so now this is on our new theme, PhD support. Yeah, so that's good. I'm happy with that. And then this stuff, this is all about journal editing. So we'll call this editing. What you can see I'm doing here is I'm just selecting text, gig economy, dragging and dropping it on here. Let's call this casual work. So if we want to create a new theme for one we've not created before, we can just click and drag onto the plus button here, and that will add some new text. So I've got these themes here, and as we go along and create these themes, we may want to kind of structure them in some way. So we might say, for example, that PhD support, that's kind of like a subset of doing a PhD. Or they're related to similar things. So we might put that there. We might say these are kind of types of employment. So casual work might be a type of employment. So we can drag and drop that code onto there. We may also put in ones that we know are going to come up, like permanent jobs, tenure track, so all these kind of things. So these might be kind of subcategories that we're kind of interested in. So yeah, we can keep going through and see more. I was working with those international PhD characters, and I got involved in supervisor training. This person talks in very long sentences, so this is about PhD support as well. So I'm dragging and drop that onto there. And so that's how the basics of the coding process works. So the codes and themes are represented by these bubbles in Quirkos. You can create as many or as few as you like. You can change the color, you can move around, you can create a structure to them by dragging them on top of each other. So you've got ones which are subcategories, and you can have subcategories as well. And you can change your mind about these by just kind of pulling them out like this, working in and out like that. But it provides quite a simple way to kind of work with and start playing with those codes. And then it's a manual process doing qualitative analysis, so you're going through and you're looking for these themes here, and then you're going through and searching through the text and creating themes as you need. You may start with basic codes, so you may do a basic kind of thematic coding approach, and then you may build that up with kind of high level themes and concepts. And so what these bubbles represent may change over time. So you can right click on any of them, let's check on PhD, and edit them and change the name. So it might be PhD, we'll call this PhD Studies now, so I've got one which is PhD Studies and PhD Support. And I've decided that actually these shouldn't really go close together because these are talking about very different things. So these codes and themes will probably evolve as you go through and explore the data as well. Now it may be that while you want to do a very kind of nuanced read through of the data, there may be also certain things that you just want to find every time somebody mentions the word PhD, for example. So with the search button there, we can click and see everything that goes on in here. So this is Bruce now, and we're using these buttons here to load a little bit more of the source now. That's where I did my postgraduate, master's and PhD. Worked fairly solidly, and we'll put that onto PhD studies. Working together with a number of my own sort of PhD students I had over the years. That's kind of PhD support, so I'm going to put that in there. But maybe this needs another code. Maybe this needs to be own PhD students. So anyway, as I'm going through and adding codes, even just by looking for the word PhD, what's this one here? Point where it ran all degrees and PhD programs, fully fledged discipline in the university. That's kind of PhD support, kind of PhD training. Again, we might start splitting those things up more and more. So PhD support, for example, that might be something that's we need to go in more. But the text search here can help us with that. We can slide the doc in and out here to see a bit more. There are also synonyms here. I'm not sure it's going to have any for PhD. Okay, right. So if you've, I guess that's the proper way to spell it. So if we put that in there, I'm not sure it's going to come out. But you can make that search kind of more specific and wider. Choose what particular sources that you search through. This is showing kind of from all of them. You can see we've got results from Bruce, Danny, David, Matilda. So these are the ones here we already coded about PhD. So the text search is quite helpful in that way. We'll just click on little X here to close that. Now what we might want to do, this kind of the PhD support thing is already becoming a bit complex. If we double click on it, it will show us all of the text that we've put under that already. So what do we have under PhD support here? Well, there'll be these quotes that we have here already. So a job to work with international PhD students at Australia University. But it may be what we want to do is see that these are kind of becoming different things. So a very common task in qualitative analysis is to want to kind of split apart these codes. So it's very common to start with quite a vague, it doesn't seem very vague, but quite an open theme like PhD support, and realize we need to be more specific. What does that mean? This means doctoral training. So I can create more codes in here, and these are becoming subcategories. Support, so there might be pastoral support, writing support, and then it would be supervisors, reading chapters. So there are all of these different things, and is reading chapters part of writing support? I'm not sure. Anyway, but we can move them around in there if we choose. So we may break these up a little bit. So structure background. So this is obviously some kind of doctoral training, supervisor training. Okay, supervisor. Oh wow. Okay, so that's something else. So that's about supervisors, and that's also kind of about doctoral training. So again, the aim of the software is just to kind of help you think through how you want to kind of group and categorize and explore and describe this data. And making these kind of subcategories is quite useful. We can click just on one of the buttons here to show just the text that we've put under there. So that's what we said just about supervisors. And at any point we can just click on the home button here to go back to the main screen. So we'll spend probably quite a lot of time playing and working with these codes and exploring the data in that way. But another thing that you might want to do once you've started to code more than one source, so we've just worked a little bit on Matilda here. That's what you're going to say. So this is a permanent jobs. It's also kind of tenure track we're talking about there as well. So we start coding across the different sources as well. We're looking at Rogers now. What we might want to do at some stage is some kind of comparative analysis. So we might want to say, what is a particular person or a particular group of individuals saying about a particular topic, and what that might. And there are various ways which Quirkos can help you structure the data to do that. So if you click on this tab here, you'll see this is the source properties. And the source properties are the ways that Quirkos describes any kind of attributes to the data and kind of creates folders and groups for the sources of data that you've brought in. So one of the things that you might want to put in here is something like data type. You might be working on a project that's got focus groups, interviews, has done surveys, has got quantitative data as well. So we'll say this is an interview. We might want to keep information about this. So interview date, we say this is October 21, or however we want to do that. So these are very flexible ways that you can kind of categorize and look at your data. If you're doing kind of like before and after kind of interviews, looking at the impact of an intervention, then this kind of date comparison can be very useful. But we can also use it for things like gender. So Roger, that's probably male. And then by flipping through the tabs, we can look at Matilda. What data type is this? Well, we use the drag down option here to choose interview. It's the interview date here. That was also October 21. Although we can put in something new, so we say maybe that was September 21. And we'll say gender for this one, female. What this does is it allows us to create these kind of structures and groupings on the fly. And when we've created these, we can use to do a kind of comparative analysis. And I'll just show you quickly how we do that. So the tabs here would take you back between the text here. This is the text tab, and then there's the source properties tab there. When we've done that, we can use what we call the query view here to query the data, to filter and look for different results by different participants or groups of participants. So what do we have here? We can look at things by, we can see interviews and if there were focus groups, for example. But let's take the gender, just because I know we've got some, well, let's do the date. So we've got ones on October. I'll click update there. We've got some people from interviews in October. We do a side-by-side comparison with interviews which were done in September. Click an update there. Right, so now we can start to look at the differences, and we can see the people we interviewed in October talked about tenure, drag this a bit bigger, permanent jobs, whereas nobody talked about tenure or permanent jobs in the September interviews. Many more people talked about, is this doctoral training? Yeah, doctoral training. So we can look and see if there are significant differences by gender, by the interview type. We can also do it by how who coded and explored the data, and that can be very useful if we want to. You're working as part of a collaborative project, and you want to understand differences in how you've coded and interpreted the data. This view is very useful for that. And you can also create reports from this view as well. So if you wanted to have to export the left query, so everything that people said in the interviews in October, you can have a report just of your October interviews. But we'll go back to the main view and we'll look at some of the other options that we have here, kind of exploring and visualizing the data. And one of the other ones will be the, we'll look at some of the export options here, but will also be things like the word cloud. So that's a way where we can see the different kind of usage of text in the data and different kind of words and themes that people have said. So for example, kind and know and think and so and research, these words are coming out quite a lot. And you've got a series of options here to choose which words you want to exclude. So probably doesn't belong in there, for example. And then we can change how these are shaped. We can choose which people we want to include in the word cloud. We can also get rid of some of those less common ones, so we can change all kinds of aspects of it. And this is something that can help us kind of see, especially when we're looking at particular people's vocabularies. Let's just choose one person. So it's Bruce talking about. Show a few more words than that. Kind, no, research, think, really, people, qualitative. Not particularly engaging at this stage. Pretty similar. More about, more them. Anyway, sometimes there's very significant words which come up there. When you're happy with the sources that you have, you can export them, save it as an image file or as a web page to share with someone else. It's quite a fun way to kind of get to play with the data a little bit. So that's the word cloud export. The other export options we have here, we've got the report, so we'll quickly go through the report. What the report does is basically show you kind of all the different aspects of data in the project. So for example, the first thing here shows you, the sources, but what most people will look at, we've got some graphs here of the different types of data we have, screenshots of what the canvas looks like, the code structure that we created. And then we've got the text, so the text sorted by theme, so everything people said about PhD studies and PhD support. And on the right side, a series of options to kind of customize the report, how things are ordered and structured, and the different headings. And when we've got those in showing the right things for us, we can save it as a Word file, as a web page again, we can print it out, or save as a PDF file. So that's quite useful for sharing when you've kind of got to the end of your report and using it as an appendix when you're writing up. You'll also see that we've got spreadsheet export options here. Now what this does is create a series of CSV files which you can open in Excel or similar, and that will just tell us all the kind of information which is in the project. So for example, here are all the codes that we created here, the titles of them, the hexadecimal color, and then how many codes out of how many codes in total in each project, how many quotes there were there in total. So lots of information there. We can also get the quotes out of here as well. So we've got the actual quotes, the actual text is in here, and we can export this and kind of rearrange it and restructure it in Excel if we want to, and print it out from here if that kind of tabulated format is useful. But what a lot of people quite like is the exporting as the Word documents. So this kind of basically kind of creates a transcript Word file again. So if we look at, we did quite a bit on, was it Bruce? Roger, I think. Yes, we did some on Roger. So here's some of the coding that we did in this project. Oh yeah, not very much in this one. I think we did mostly in Matilda. Yes. So this basically allows you to kind of print out and go back as if you kind of coded it with highlighters and go back and read it in that kind of way. And that can be very helpful to kind of go back and review your data. You can see how you've coded it and who did the coding, if there's multiple people working on the project, and whether you're agreeing here. And you've got all these kind of color-coded highlights here. So it's a very useful way to get the data back out. The other export options here are you can save the project just with the sources, or just the structure. So the sources will just save the source files that you brought into the project, so you can code it with a different coding framework. You can try a different coding approach. And the structure will actually save just your coding approach. Remove the sources, so if you were doing a priori or framework analysis, then you'd be able to use that to do it. And there's lots of different ways in which you can use the views in Quirkos to kind of look at your coding structure. So this view button here gives you lots of options. We've also got the tree view here, which is kind of more similar to what you'll see in kind of other software, and this can be very useful if you're working with a lot of the kind of exported kind of tree hierarchy here, but this works in the same way. You can right click to edit things, you can merge codes together, you can duplicate them, you can delete them, and so this just gives you kind of an alternative view. There's also options so you can put it in alphabetical order, or size, the number of quotes that you've put in there already, and then you'll see that kind of update on the fly as things move around. You can also do those same view options in the bubble view as well. So we've got a kind of grid layout here, which means we can put it in alphabetical order, E, O, T, P, P, or you can turn that off, and then you've got the no auto range. So we're the physical position that you put things on the canvas. And you've also got the option here to put on the number of codings. So that shows you how many codes you've got. But by default, Quirkos doesn't keep that on. We're trying not to quantify the data too much, so you don't focus too much on how many times there's an instance, because we're trying to do a qualitative interpretation of this data. And so just because there's a lot more instances of one person talking about something, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's more significant. We want to keep going back to the data and reading about it. And that's what Quirkos is trying to do, trying to give you alternative ways to read your data. And when you come to write up, one of the great advantages of using any kind of qualitative software is that it helps you to find those quotes that you've categorized to start writing up. So for example, if I wanted to have everything on supervisors, I click on my supervisor button here, and everywhere in Quirkos where you see quotes, there are these buttons to copy the text. So you select which quotes we want. Do we want just this one or that one or all of them? And then a copy button here, so we can copy and paste this into Word or similar. Oops. So if I start Word here, I can copy and paste that one that I've selected there, or I can select all of them up here. And this helps me write up, and it's also got the attributes. So this is the source that it came from as well. So I can tell which people have been talking about my quote. When I come to write up the section for this example on supervisors, it's really handy to quickly find those quotes. And it can also be very useful as you go along to create kind of meta categories for your codes. So I always have a code which is called something like key quotes. And this one I keep with all the kind of the best quotes in. So things that I think I'm really likely to quote, or the thing that's so good that it might become like the title of a chapter or the title of a journal article. When I can also keep these for things like things I don't understand. And I can put these for things that I need to review in the future. But another way to keep track of these things in Quirkos is with the Memos feature. So there's a button here which opens the Memos panel, and it allows me to basically write little notes on any part of the text. So this person here is talking about modeling behavior. So rather than drag and drop some text onto a bubble, if I drag and drop it onto the Memos column, we get this here. So modeling, whoops. Sounds quite quantitative, and now I've got this little section here that's attached to that section of text, so I can keep my own kind of notes and comments and reflections as I go along. There's also in the live version what's used as a chat function to talk to other people while they're working on the project, but you can also use this for your own reflexive writing at the kind of project level. So the memos keep track of certain bits of certain things that you want to note about a particular part of the text, whereas you can use the chat function here to talk about the project as a whole. So you could say, I'm just starting out today. Already created a lot of themes about PhDs. Not sure they are all correctly named, so might want to go back and look at that. And so this you can also export to get your kind of journal of the process, and that can be very helpful writing up as well. Often the qualitative analysis process takes quite a long time to do. It may be months later that you're not quite sure why you ended up with so many PhD support subcategories, and you can go back and look at your decision-making process over that. But you can also use this to do reflexive writing. So for a lot of people, one of the ways that they like to do analysis is by writing. So it helps a lot of people to verbalize or to write out their thoughts in a way, and doing that kind of helps you become conscious of particular things in your process, particular things in the data. For example, writing about the process made me quite conscious of the number of different slightly vague categories I have around PhDs and what PhDs mean to my respondents and other people, and the respondents helping other people with their PhDs. So I need a better way of working out how to distinguish between those and conceptualize those in the future. So for a lot of people, reflexive writing in terms of the notes or in terms of the kind of a reflexive diary or journal for your project could be very helpful. And you can also keep notes at the source level as well. So you can create a property for comments. You can say this was a very good interview, but lots of complex fields to so that's pretty banal, but you can use this to have a lot more interesting kind of discussions with yourself at the source level as well. So that's pretty much all that I was going to cover in the session today. We've looked at bringing in sources of data. We've looked at creating codes and themes, rearranging them, restructuring them, And we've also looked at categorizing these sources of text. We've also looked at doing comparative analysis, looking at particular pieces of them. We've looked at using the search here to look for particular words. We've used some of the export options here, so we've looked at the different kind of reports we can have. We've looked at word clouds. We've looked at bringing our data into Excel spreadsheets, and we've looked at bringing it into Word documents. We've also looked at exporting it. There's also an option here for the RefuQDA exchange, so we can share it with other qualitative software packages. We've also looked at different ways that we can restructure our coding framework. So we've looked at things like the tree view here and rearranging by title. And we've also looked at different ways that we can use reflexive text and writing to look at the data. So we've looked at memos here, which can be put on a particular piece of text. We've also looked at the chat function here, which can use to keep a research journal of the whole process as we go along. So if there's anything else you'd like to talk about that, please let me know. Okay, so one comment is how to generate overlapping codes in the report. When I generate the report, there is only one canvas view showing. Okay, so if you want to, one of the things that I've not shown today is the overlap view. So what that does is look to see how many times a particular piece of text has been coded to more than one code. So for example here, this is about multiple things. If we go back to Rogers here, so this is about tenure track and permanent jobs. And what we might want to do is look at connections between that different source of data. So what we can do is right click on any of the buttons here, so say PhD studies, and choose the overlap view. And the overlap view counts how many times that particular theme, so PhD students, has been coded at the same time as another theme. And what that will do eventually is help us see kind of connections between the data. So PhD studies, well, this is closely connected with the themes about editing and also our own PhD students. Okay, there's not a lot of data in this project, so the overlap view is not very useful. But when you start to have lots of different codes, this kind of shows you the connections between those codes and themes, even some of them which you might not have anticipated. Now, by default, when you generate the report, not all of these overlap views are generated because there's a different overlap view for each of them, and it adds quite a long time to the report generation. But if you click on the settings button here and then click on the general project preferences, there are two options here for the report generation preferences. The first is generate the overlap views. So the overlap views is what we were showing there. So that kind of Venn diagram which shows which themes and codes are connecting together. So if we turn that on, those views will start to appear in the report. There's another option here which is generate hierarchy views, and the hierarchy views are that kind of expanded link of all our codes. So this project's not too big, we'll put those on and we'll just generate a quick report here and we'll show those options. You can see that the generating those views does take a little bit longer, which is why they're off by default, but you can always put them on if you need them in the report. So we'll choose here, include hierarchy views, include overlap views. If we scroll down now, right, so here are hierarchies. So this explodes out and shows all the subcategories for PhD support, types of employment, so any ones which have subcategories. And now here are the overlap views. So a bit small in this preview, but you can see here's the PhD studies one, here's the editing and PhD students overlap here. So this now has got all the overlap views for all the different codes. And it may be there's only some of them that you're interested in, and that way when you export them into a different report you can delete those. So that gives you a lot more information into the report. So I hope that answers your question. If there's anything else anybody wants to see, do let me know. Otherwise, if you go to our website, www.quirkos.com, you'll find a lot more support and tutorials and information to help you. Choose the Learn Quirkos option here. There's manuals and tutorials. You can download guides here, step-by-step guides. You can download also, you can watch video tutorials similar to this one. They're all on our YouTube channel, and there's also the full manual as well. So if you need a lot more detail about what each of the buttons does and how different things work, you can see everything is listed in there, and you can see all the different things which you might want to work with. And also don't forget to get in touch with us. So you can always email support@quirkos.com And anytime, even 7 days a week, we're there to help and support you. During office hours, we take phone calls as well. And we always provide support on Twitter as well. So if you want to get in contact with us, we're usually answering our Twitter feed. So any questions and queries you have there, feel free to ask. So I don't have any more questions for today. We'll run another workshop next month, and I think we'll be showing our latest version of Quirkos then, so that's going to be quite exciting. But for now, thanks so much for getting in touch and watching this, and contact us if you have any questions and queries. Thanks so much.